Hey Coach, and the Nick Saban Show here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. So happy to have you along with us on this Thursday evening. I'm Eli Gold. Our special media guest, Cecil Hurt, the sports editor of the Tuscaloosa News, and just getting himself settled in now, the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Coach Nick Saban. Coach, it is great to see you here in person, and welcome to another season, sir.
Yeah, well, we're glad to be here, that's for sure, and it's good to see a lot of folks here, too. A little different than we've had in the past, especially last year, but we appreciate you all coming, and we're looking forward to, having a great season.
I hate to start on a down note, Coach, but before you walked in, Cecil and I were talking about a couple of gentlemen who passed away today, who I don't know how well you knew either one, but Keith McCants, who played here as a linebacker and defensive end, and Jimmy Fuller, a player and coach here at Alabama. Both men passed away today, and you hate to see that. Two really nice guys, and it's a big, big loss to our family.
Well, Keith McCants was a great player. I didn't know him, but when I was in the NFL, I remember doing scouting reports about what a good player he was and what a problem he was to play against. So, our thoughts and prayers go out to their families, and it's always difficult for everybody when something like this happens, but they represented the university well, and we're certainly appreciative of all the efforts that they made to help Alabama be successful, and hopefully, their family will be blessed in their time of sorrow.
Indeed. And Cecil, you wrote a lot of great columns about those two gentlemen over the years.
Well, thank you, Eli. I knew Coach Fuller, who was an assistant through three coaches.
Yeah.
He came back with Coach Perkins, and part of the 1992 national championship team that won against Miami. And then Keith, people forget what an outstanding player he was at Alabama. Just an incredible athlete. He's the number 4 pick in the NFL draft, and I'm so sad to see for both of them and both families.
Definitely. Coach, we're here obviously to talk football, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Habitat for Humanity, the Knicks Kids Foundation, and that 18th house dedication that took place earlier today. Jocelyn Hamner and her children having a home in large part due to what you and Ms. Terry, the foundation, and Habitat for Humanity did. It's just wonderful, the work that you guys do in the community.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful. It's really wonderful for us, too. And, when we had the tornado in, I guess, 2011, this was kind of Terry's idea to a lot of people had lost their homes, and this one neighborhood we saw, every home was gone except the church. So we thought that was kind of a blessing. So we wanted to start right there, and she had great ideas, and our players have contributed to this through the years, and lots of people, Katie and all the people who work at Knicks Kids, all the people who support Knicks Kids. But this is the 18th family we've been able to help, and that's kind of a good feeling for all of us that it's wonderful for us, too.
It really is. It's, and the smiles that are on the family faces and so on, we can't say enough. With that said, here we sit virtually on the eve of another season. The hay is in the proverbial barn. How you feeling?
Never in the barn.
Yeah. That's true. There's always work that can be done.
Yeah, every practice that you have, everything that you expose players to, there's always something that you're trying to coach them up on, trying to correct, trying to get right. And especially first games, because first games, you can sort of defend a lot of ghost, not knowing for sure what the other team's going to do against you. They've had a whole off season to change some things and so forth. So sometimes we can overload players with defending ghosts too. So that's never a good thing. But I do think our players have worked hard. I think they're ready for this. I think this season is kind of a special challenge, a special year for this team to really create its own identity. It's always that way when you have a new team. We have a lot of new faces in the lineup, especially on offense. And I think when you come off a championship year, there's kind of a price for success. Can you not let that success, allow that success to really have any impact on your ability to focus and continue to do the things and create the right habits and make the right choices to create those habits so that you can play at a high level on a consistent basis. And, and also when you win, every team has a chip on their shoulder when they play you.
Sure.
So you got to change the way they think, and you've got to be able to dominate your box, every player in the game for 60 minutes to be able to do that. So, and it doesn't matter what ESPN says or where you're ranked or any of that stuff, because that's not going to win or lose the game. It's got to be by what we do, how we play, how we perform, and it's pretty simple. Block, tackle, don't make mental errors, and execute together as a group. And, it's sort of, vital that a team has great competitive character, and that's, every person on the team. And that's something that you really don't ever know for sure until you get out there and play. But culture of a character is vital to team success, and that means every player's got to buy into it. So we'll kind of see where we are against a good team. Miami's got a good team. They got 19 out of 22 starters coming back. They also have a couple transfers that are going to play for them that are pretty good players. So be a challenging game.
And one of the best quarterbacks in America.
Yeah, a very good athlete. Really knows this offense well, does a really good job of executing their offense. They have really good skill players on the outside. They got really good running backs. They have quarterback running plays, which he can do, but he's also a very efficient passer. So this is a challenging game for our defense.
Cecil, jump on in.
Coach, over the course of August, it seemed like you were having some guys in, some guys out, dealing with some injuries that now this week it seems like the training staff and the medical staff has everybody close to 100%. Where are you heading into the game from that standpoint?
Well, I always ask a player, regardless of what the training staff tells me, can you play? Can you go out there and do your job the way you think you're able to do it? I don't know if some of these players are to that point that they would be able to do that. LeBron Ray has practiced some. DeMarco Hellams has practiced some. Are they ready to go out there and play in the game? That'll be a game time decision. And those are probably the two guys that I would say that most people would be most interested in.
One thing that hasn't changed over the years, Coach, we're ready for our first phone call of the night. And as per usual, Pee Wee from Grand Bay, Alabama is on the line. First phone call brought to us by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Pee Wee, welcome back. I trust that you survived all the storm problems down your way, huh?
Yes, sir. We were very lucky. It went more to our west, so we got out of it with just very little bit of anything.
Well, it's great to have you on the show again. Why don't you jump in and talk with the coach?
Well, Pee Wee, let me just say something to you before you say something to me. You got your work cut out for you this year, son. Last year you had all them great players playing, had lots of experience, and all that.
Great offensive line.
Now you got 3 new starters to deal with. All right, so I want to ask you how you think they're doing.
Well, from everything that I get to see and read, I think that they're doing better. But I know that they haven't had the opportunity to have everybody in there all throughout camp. You've had to rotate, considering about injuries and stuff like that. But it all comes down to the communication. So if their communication is good and they've got their blocking all figured out, and the center position plays the way that we think that it's going to play, I feel pretty good about it. But you never know until they get out there for the first game and see how they do.
Well, you're probably right about that, but I have confidence in the group. We've got 2 starters back, and they are both playing really well. And the new guys that are in there certainly are capable of being really good players. How their lack of experience affects what they do, and this is probably going to usually shows up a little more in pass protection than it does in the running game. Miami does present some problems. There's a new thing in college football that people don't probably realize. It's probably a little too technical, But people play this thing that I call eyes coverage. You blitz 6 guys, and you play 2 under zone and 3 deep. So you're not playing man-to-man, you're just playing zone. So it doesn't look like man-to-man to the quarterback, but they're rushing 6 guys, so it is a blitz. But yet you got 2 guys covering 53 yards of the field sideways. So, we don't do this because I'm too old-fashioned to think that you let people run free and not cover them. But it is effective because it can affect the quarterback. And I think we need to do a really good job in this game with the offensive line, and that ties in the running back sometimes as well, of being able to protect, and not have negative plays relative to some of those things, because there's great opportunity to make explosive plays if you pick this stuff up. So we worked really hard on it. I think we got a good plan, so hopefully these guys will be able to go out and execute it.
Pee Wee, thank you, sir. Coach, tell us about Doug Maron. A lot of us know him from his NFL days and so on, as the offensive line coach. What does he bring to the table? How's he been working with the guys? What's his style of coaching?
Doug's a really, really good coach, really smart, very bright, really good relationship with the players. He's got tons of experience. He was a long-time college coach before he ever went to the NFL. Mm-hmm. He was the head coach at Syracuse. He's assistant at Georgia Tech and other places where he coached the offensive line at Tennessee. I actually tried to hire him a couple times prior to this because he was such a good offensive line coach. So I think he's done a really, really good job with our players. But we just got to keep developing because we got a lot of young players at that position that have a lot of potential, and we need to keep bringing them along throughout the year. But I'm pleased with the way, Doug has handled his position.
We've got a lot more. Thank you, Coach. We've got a lot more coming up with the coach and with Cecil Hurt. If you'd like to join the conversation, it's a toll-free call, 877-202-BAMA. Same number we've had forever, 877-202-BAMA. This segment of the Nick Saban Show, presented by Royal Furniture. Visit Royal Furniture in Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Memphis, or Jackson, Tennessee for the lowest prices on furniture and mattresses. Online, check them out at royalfurniture.com. Royal Furniture, proud sponsor of our booth cam for all Crimson Tide games. We're back in just a moment here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, Coach, and the Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. Protect your cars, home, life, and business with Alpha. Get a quote or find a local agent at alphainsurance.com. Eli Gold with Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News and Coach Nick Saban. And Coach, again this year, we have a Nick Saban Show blog on al.com. And we've got a couple of questions each Thursday night from that blog. The first one tonight comes from Curtis up in Decatur, Alabama. Says, Coach, I think this is going to be the last year for us to play a neutral site game for a while to open the year. Can you reflect on how big early games like Saturday in Atlanta have helped grow the program?
Well, I think if people think back, when we beat Clemson, when they were number 9 and we weren't even ranked, in the very beginning, that probably did more to ignite the program, influence recruiting in so many ways. So I think that early on, these kinds of games early in the season, playing against really good teams, were really instrumental in us being able to develop the kind of reputation as a program that would help us continue to be successful. And then, when we started winning in the SEC, that kind of compounded itself. But,
sure.
The downside of all that is, I've talked about this before. We've always tried to play 9 or 10 really good opponents, and it's hard to get home and home opponents. But I think more and more people are starting to realize that the fans don't want to see a whole bunch of games that aren't really games that they're interested in, and more people are interested now in making home and home games so we can have 9 or 10 games. I've always promoted having 10 games in the SEC like we did last year, but I'm the only vote on that one, and there is some conversation about maybe going to 9 games since we've expanded the league in the future. But I think those games were very instrumental. But I also think that, once we get to the point as a program when we've been in the playoffs a lot, we've been to a lot of bowl games, our fans have lots of opportunity to travel to different places, it gets a little almost strenuous for them to go to a neutral site game as well as to go to all those games. I hope we continue to be able to go to all those games for our fans. But so now we've decided that, playing home and home enhances, the season ticket holders' experience and opportunity to see more good games at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Indeed. Cecil, jump on in, sir.
Coach, when I was a kid, if I came across a word when I was reading something and didn't know it, I had to go look it up in the dictionary. So on Monday, on your Zoom call, you referred to clamps and said we didn't know what that was, which was 100% correct. But I went and looked it up, a clamp defense, and found out two things. First, a lot of the NFL staffs, defensive staffs, refer to it as a Nick Saban clamp, so congratulations on that. And second, what's the difference in a clamp and a cloud, and how does Bryce or the quarterback, whoever's playing quarterback, recognize that?
All right, so I'm going to try to explain this, and I'm going to put two thumbs up, like two defensive backs are covering a slot receiver and an outside receiver, and they're both 6 or 7 yards off. All right, and the safety, the inside guy, may be a little bit wider than that. And the reason that people do this is they have what you call an apex player who's an overhang player who really would be an outside linebacker type of player in a lot of people's vernacular, but he's a defensive back because we're in the spread and people have, multiple receivers, 3 or 4 receivers in the game. So this guy really can't cover number 2 if he runs to the flat. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so we got these two guys reading this inside guy. So as he goes to the flat, the corner rolls up into cloud, to use your term, and the safety rolls back, and the apex player then can display the hook. If they both go vertical down the field, the apex player takes the next guy to the flat, and these two guys just play what you call quarters, which is like man-to-man on those two guys. So that's clamp. All right, so I don't like clamp anymore. So we don't play it very much because, people, when you play off with the corner and people throw a bubble, and then your corner, a bubble pass means the bubble goes out, the receiver blocks the corner who's rolling up. Well, you're always soft against that, So you got to have really, really aggressive corners that are more zone-type corners that are physical players to be able to play that style. And if you recruit that kind of player, then it's a great style to play, and Miami does a really good job of it. So our guys, we try to recruit more guys that can be good man-to-man players. So we press more. We take things away by alignment. So they're not as good at doing that type of thing. I don't know. Does that mean anything to anybody out there?
Absolutely. And you will have some freshman receivers, obviously, in the rotation, at least judging from the chart. And is that difficult for them? Is that the kind of thing they hadn't seen I'm sure they've seen in your preparation, but not in high school?
No, I think it's a pretty common thing that people play that, type of defense. The receivers, Jabo Williams has been a really good addition to our team, receiver. Jonathan Mechie is healthy, finally, and I think he'll be a real solid player for us. Trey Holden has had a really good camp. Slade is a very, very dependable, decisive guy that's easy for the quarterback to play with. And then, we're going to have some freshmen. JoJo Earl has been, a very impactful guy. And then we got some other guys that have a whole lot of potential, but they're just going to have to improve on their ability to play with consistency in performance. And, I think, one thing that people probably don't ever consider, especially with young players, is they can get overwhelmed. When I say overwhelmed, I don't just mean overwhelmed because they're learning a new offense and they have all these things to learn and they've got all this new terminology. They can get overwhelmed by school. They can get overwhelmed because people have such great expectations for them. And they think they're failing if they're not starting, and they think so they put all this pressure on themselves because there's been this kind of outcome expectation that's been created for them, and it's really unfair because they all need to go through a developmental process that's going to help them become the kind of players that they're capable of becoming. But they have to have confidence. They have to know what they're doing, how to do it, why it's important to do it that way, so that they can go out there and play fast and create value for themselves. And it's really unfair to them if we put them out there before they're ready to do that. But they get a little bit overwhelmed with all the anxiety that all these factors sort of bring. And I think it's a little bit almost unfair, to young players because they get a lot of publicity, which is great. I love it that they get publicity in high school, and I love it that they get publicity as recruits. But success has its price, as I said before. All right, so now you start feeling pressure about what you should be accomplishing, what kind of outcome that you can get. So it becomes a little harder for you to focus on the things you need to do to get the outcome because you're frustrated because you're not where you think you should be, could be, people expect you to be, however you want to say it. And I think it's, I really hate it for young players that they're kind of, a product of all the publicity and all the expectations that get created for them.
Let's go down to the Gulf Coast, gentlemen. We have a caller from Loosedale, Mississippi, not far from all of that devastation down on the Gulf Coast. Micah, how are you doing down there?
I'm doing good, Eli. How are you?
Good. I trust that you fared okay with the storm?
Yes, sir. We just got a lot of wind and a few limbs fell off the trees, but other than that, not much.
Well, that's good news. You're on with Coach Saban. What's on your mind?
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good, Micah. How are you?
I'm doing good. My question is for you. We saw Devontae Smith win the Heisman last year, and, the last receiver to win the Heisman was Desmond Howard. But how excited were you to see him to be able to win the Heisman, especially as a wide receiver?
Well, I was excited for Smitty because, I talked about competitive character a little bit earlier. And I don't know that we've had 3 players in the program over the 14 teams that we've been a part of here that has better competitive character, was a better leader on the team, set a better example on and off the field for what you'd like to see people do to have the best opportunity to be successful. So in every way, as a player, his production, his performance, the kind of person he was, the kind of character that he had, you just always root for guys that do all those things exactly right, and you're so happy for them when they get some kind of positive recognition because of what they were able to accomplish. And I don't think we've had many players here that has had much more production than him. Maybe if Waddle doesn't get hurt, he doesn't have as much production. But you talk about a guy that kind of took the bull by the horns when that happened, which could have been a big negative for our team, and never skipped a beat, and just kind of took the weight of the world on his shoulders and did a marvelous job in handling every circumstance and situation anybody presented to him. So I think it was really deserving. It's a tough position to win the Heisman, but there couldn't have been a more deserving player, and I couldn't have been happier for a player.
And Devontae's going to be our honorary captain on Saturday. I was happy to see that. He's coming to Atlanta. NFL's not playing yet, and he'll be there rooting us on.
Yeah, and we're going to be happy to see him, no doubt. And, we're going to have quite a few players there.
Always do.
But, I had a radio show this morning with Keyshawn Johnson and Jay Williams. And I never realized this. I don't think about things like this. But they said you have 3 quarterbacks that are going to start in the NFL that were all in the quarterback room together.
Yep.
They were all in the quarterback room together in 2018. I never thought of that.
It's amazing.
They were.
Yeah.
All right. Jalen, Tua, and Mac Jones were all there. And at the same time, all obviously different stages of development, but I never really thought of that.
No, but it's a wonderful honor to see all. I was just looking around. We got some Pittsburgh Steelers jerseys out here with Najee Harris's name on the back. Another guy who has made.
Yeah.
By the way, a totally off-the-wall question here. We still have a Devontae Smith on the roster. Have we come up for a nickname since he really can't be Smitty? Have you guys come up with something to call him?
All I can tell you, it's easy for me to remember his name. I got to tell this guy over here, though, a story. This is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, right? Terry and I both grew up in West Virginia. So big Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And it was like my dad would take us to one game every year, one Pittsburgh Pirate game and one Pittsburgh Steelers game. And it was like a 3-hour drive from my house to get there. And that was like the best thing that happened all year. I mean, that was the number one thing that there ever was, to go see a professional baseball game or professional football game. So we all grew up in big Steelers fans. So fast forward about 20 years, and I'm coaching at the Cleveland Browns. So all these people that we grew up with, all my best friends, all the guys I played high school football with, everybody in our family are Steelers fans. So we go play in Pittsburgh. We're in the same division with them. So we go play in Pittsburgh, and I got to get like 100 tickets. And not one person rooted for the Browns. Not one.
That's a great story. That's a great story. But did they offer to pay?
No.
No, didn't even offer to pay. I hear you.
Not no, hell no.
We're coming right back with the coach and with Cecil Hurt. More of your questions at 877-202-BAMA. We're back in a moment on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Welcome back, everybody. This segment of the Nick Saban Show is sponsored by New Coke Zero Sugar. New look, improved taste. New Coke, Zero Sugar. Eli Gold, Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News here with the coach. Cecil, jump on in, sir.
Coach, I'm going to ask what I think has been the number one burning question among the media on the Zoom calls so far. Is your Australian punter comfortable, and would having a kangaroo at practice make him more comfortable?
You know what? I can't answer that. The guy is a talented guy. Obviously, he's a freshman. This will be the first time he punts in a game. But he can do multiple things. These guys can rugby punt. They can punt from the pocket. You asked the question, which, I would never say it's dumb question time, but you asked the question if he was comfortable playing football. And I said, we're not asking the guy to play football, we're asking him to punt. There's a difference. So, anyway, he's doing fine. Always anxious to see how, young guys do. I think he's pretty well adapted. But, it took, and this is the first experience we had, really, a guy coming from Australia to here. And it took like 2 weeks. I mean, the guy couldn't sleep. The time differences were so bad. I was, for 2 weeks, I was scratching my head and saying, what did we do here? But once he got sort of acclimated and sleeping and all that, you started to see how well he could really do. So we think he'll be really good.
Yeah, because Jesse had 2 years at junior college. Too.
Yeah, Jesse was here for 2 years.
Yeah,
so.
but right before you played in.
Right.
Yeah.
But, Jesse was the most interesting recruiting story of all time. Because Jesse's parents had never been to America, and Jesse had been in America for 2 years. He went to Arizona Western Junior College. Mm-hmm. So we're recruiting Jesse from junior college, and I would do like at 6 a.m, because it'd be 10 at night, in Australia. I would do Zooms and Jesse's dad's name was Arthur. So I would do these Zooms, and I did 5 or 6 of them, recruiting Zooms, talking about academic support and all the things that we do for players in the personal development programs, how we could help Jesse develop into a football player and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, his parents knew nothing about American college. They knew nothing about training table. They knew nothing about anything. And they were great people, just fantastic people. So after about the 5th Zoom call, I call and Arthur comes on the line and he said, well, I've decided where I want Jesse to go to school. And my heart just dropped. All right, they hadn't been here on an official visit, never been to America. And I'm thinking, he's not coming to Alabama, when the dad says that. And I said, well, how'd you come to this decision, Arthur? And he said, well, I got 25 schools calling me here, and all they ever talk about is Alabama. So I think you guys must be the best, so that's where I want Jesse to go, and that's how we got him.
There you go. That's what it's all. That's great. That's a great story.
That's the truth.
Listen, our conversation that we've been in here it leads us into a question on the AL.com Nick Saban Show blog. Homer from Alpharetta, Georgia. He wanted background on James Burnip, which you gave, the Australian punter. He said, would you tell us a bit about Jack Martin, the transfer from Troy?
Yeah, Jack has done well, but Jack is actually a very nice dual guy to have on your team because he does a really good job of kicking off. He's a really good place kicker.
Right.
Which gives us an adequate backup because obviously we have a pretty good guy.
Sure.
And he can punt. So it's always nice to have someone on your roster who, if something happens to somebody, you got one guy that could take a couple guys' place. And he's done a nice job for us, so we're happy to have him.
Cool. Good to hear. Back to the phones, fellas. Let's go to Jason. He's in Prattville with a question. Hello, Jason. Good evening.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, Jason.
How you doing, Eli?
Doing great, sir. Glad to have you with us. What's on your mind?
Well, I know everybody's talking about the offense. How's the defense doing for Alabama?
The question is how the defense doing for Alabama? Well, we got a little more experience on defense coming back. I mean, I think we have 8 starters. Henry Toto is just like having a starter because he played in the same system at Tennessee, so it's been an easy transition for him at the position. We have a couple guys that are banged up right now that were starters last year that will be anxious to get back, and I think they'll be back fairly quickly. But, we've got good enough experience. I think it's going to be really important to our team early on that our defense can play well. Miami's a fastball team. They're going to go fast. And that's one of the things that our defense is going to really have to adapt to. There were times last year with the young defense that we struggled with that, like at Ole Miss, but I think our players are a little more experienced now. I think that'll help us because communication is so important when you play a fastball team. Everybody on defense has to know the signal. Everybody's got to get the signal. Everybody's got to be on the same page, and everybody's got to communicate so that you don't have mental errors, and that's really what we struggled with a year ago. So I think with a more veteran group, I think my expectation is we'll be better. We got better on defense toward the end of last season, and hopefully we'll be better this year. You
mentioned Henry To'o. He was the #1 tackler for Tennessee by like 14 or 16 tackles more than the guy who was #2. He had a ton of tackles for loss. I don't mind saying when I heard that he was coming, I had a big old smile on my face. I can't put words in your mouth, but that was a nice acquisition.
Yeah, Henry is really smart, very good signal caller, a good leader. I think he allows Christian Harris then to play his natural position, so he doesn't have to play Mike. He can play Will, which is more natural for him. So I think it makes them both better. And certainly the communication helps the entire front. Henry's been wonderful. We recruited him in high school. We thought he was the best player at his position when he was in high school, and certainly he hasn't disappointed us at all since he's been here.
Definitely. Cecil, jump on in.
Coach, at running back, you have several talented players. How are they different? What is different from B-Rob to Jace to Roydell and so forth? How are they different, and how will you use them differently?
Well, I think everybody kind of knows B-Rob's style. You know, B-Rob's a little bigger guy, power, has decent enough speed, can make you miss, physical kind of power runner, which is good. I think Jace is more of an all-around. He's got speed, he's got some power, he can change direction, he can make you miss, he's a really good receiver. Decent enough pass blocker. Roydell is a little smaller and probably the fastest and most elusive of the bunch. But, you know, the one guy that I've been really impressed with is Trey Sanders. This guy, since he's been here, has gone through 2 seasons. The first season he was going to play. He was a backup runner. He was going to play. Had a very bright future. Gets Liz Frank in his foot, which puts him out for the year. Then he's playing some last year, just coming along. He gets T-boned in a car accident when his brother's driving when he's home. And this guy had a broken hip. I mean, he had a lot to overcome. And he's really worked his tail off, and there would be nobody on our team that I would be more happy to see have success, because he's getting very close to being 100%. And the other guys might be a touch ahead of him right now because he's just getting back to 100%. But I'm anxious to see him get back in action and see how he does. And it'll be great. And I hope our fans appreciate, because this guy has really had to go through a lot to get back on the field.
Yep, from Port St. Joe, Florida. Trey is a good one. We're coming right back. More with the coach right after this. You're listening to the Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. For auto, home, and life insurance, call Alpha. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Welcome back to the Nick Saban Show. If you've missed any portion of this evening's program, you can always catch it on demand on our Alabama Insider podcast. You can download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Our media guest tonight, Cecil Hertz, sports editor, Tuscaloosa News. Jump on in again, Cecil.
Coach, I was talking with Maron earlier about, it's been 18 months really since you were about to go out and practice football one day, and they told you weren't going to practice football that day, and you've had so much. I don't think people really appreciate how much hard work it has been for you and your staff and so forth to make all those adjustments. And yet it's also changed in other ways. And I was just to step away from football for just 1 minute. How's it been being a grandfather over the last year and a half?
Well, I've been a grandfather for 7 years. Amelie 7. James is a year and a half. You know, it makes me happy to have, you know, family is a great thing. And it's the most comforting thing to have great relationships with your family, your children, your grandchildren. And these are not things that we should take for granted, no doubt, because obviously we won't always have the opportunity to enjoy those things. Makes Miss Terry happy to be able to play with James and spoil the kids and do all that. And it makes me happy that it makes her happy, but I enjoy it. I mean, it makes you young at heart. You know, I never swam in our swimming pool for like 8 or 9 years. I was never in our pool for 8 or 9 years till Amelie was old enough to go swimming. And she says, Papa, let's go swimming. So I've been swimming in it ever since. So that keeps you young at heart. And I think that, you know, kids are just wonderful. We love them, and they're both good kids, and we're very fortunate that our kids have turned out and done well, and that they have wonderful children.
Well, you're very, very lucky, and I know, like you say, and so many stories you have told over the years revolve around family, and that is wonderful. Coach, one thing that remains again this year is it's time for your final word, and our friends from Mercedes are back as the sponsor. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing?
You know, the culture of our program has always been to get players to play one play at a time, focus on what's in front of them. Win stands for what's important now. That's what I always say to them. And, outcomes are controlled by the process of things necessary to get the outcome. And the culture of the program here has always been to try to get players to focus on one play at a time, no scoreboard, nameless opponent. Everything's all about what you do. And that's the culture that we're trying to create with this team, so that they can go out and have fun, because it's a lot more fun to play that way when you're not really worried about winning. You're just real concerned about being your best, playing your best, doing it one play at a time. Don't get frustrated by the last play if it wasn't a good one, or get too satisfied if it was a good one. So I think those things are really, really important in terms of the competitive character that every team needs to have to really be successful, and it has to be collective. It has to be, everybody has to buy in, and that was one of the great things about last year's team, and it's certainly one of the things that we want to build this year. And because we have young players, I think it's really important that we have great fan support, that you're really with this team, the energy and enthusiasm. And I know it's different. It's different because, we didn't have fans last year. And, one of the things that all fans should know, that every player that left the program last year said that they were sorry. I'm talking about all the guys that got drafted, that they played their last year at Alabama and they weren't able to enjoy playing in front of the fans. Because the spirit and the passion that you have is what makes it special for them to play here, and they played their last year here and didn't have that. So this group needs to sort of get that spirit and that passion that makes it so special to play here, and I hope that you can offer that to them in a very positive way, because I do think being a young player, you haven't experienced that, and you really need to. And I think it can help motivate you to want to be the best version of yourself, which is what we need to do to have a successful team. So I'm really excited about the challenges that we have. We're playing a really good team. We're playing in Atlanta. Atlanta's always been a great place for us to play. But I'm also anxious to see how our players respond in this game. I really am. I mean, everybody keeps asking me about all these different parts of our team, and I'm like, hey, I'm as anxious as you are to see how they do. We've prepared them well. They've worked hard. Now we'll just see how they can go out there and play for 60 minutes in the game, and see if they can stay focused on what they need to do to play with the kind of discipline they need to play with to have success.
Indeed. Coach, as always, it's great to have you with us. Looking forward to letting you get out of the office on Thursday nights and spend time with some folks other than the staff. And it's going to be a great season. Thanks again for your time, as always.
Well, I appreciate it, Eli. But, I've always really, and been here for now, this is the 15th year.
Right.
So this guy sitting next to me, I probably have as much respect for anybody that's a journalist in his profession, because he's got great perspective. He's got a lot of experience. Never tells it like it isn't. Always tells it like it is. And I really appreciate that. I hope you're feeling better. I know you went through a little accident there with your leg and all that. I don't get to see you anymore except on a Zoom call, so I hope you're doing well. But I do appreciate the way you've created a lot of interest through the years for fans and Alabama football players. And that's something that I really appreciate and thank you for.
Exactly right. Cecil Hurt, well done. And you're a great wordsmith on top of everything else, man. You can, with a very dry sense of humor. So it's quite the combination. Coach Nick Saban, ladies and gentlemen. Coach, thank you. Cecil, thank you so much for joining us.